hour or so we've dedicated to updating the board on our diversity and equity action plan. So we'll do, Carolyn will kind of lead us through that. We'll do some general updates on the overall plan, and then specifically what we have to share with the board today are the first couple of reports we've received back from Ed Northwest, focusing specifically on welcoming environment at school and student discipline. And talk a little bit about when we anticipate receiving the rest of the reports, and then how we anticipate moving forward with the information we've already received.
Which line? So
Oh.
that makes sense.
There's not.
Anybody not hear me? Okay, all right. And with that, I'm done.
So I have, I want to call it PowerPoint because it's not, it's a Google presentation, so I have a copy of the Google presentation for you to follow along. Okay, and I'm pretty sure my clicker will work from here. So here's our agenda. As Larry said, we're looking at just an update for the overall action plan, and specifically then we're going to really dive into, spend some time with Education Northwest, their equity data project, and talk to you about the format of the plan, the first reports, and then our timeline of when we think we're going to be able to get the final reports in. Okay? So the first part we're going to look at is community engagement, and just to remind us all that, when we began with Education Northwest, they did the focus groups and parent survey, and we had by the end 54 focus groups, and we had 375 participants. So that was really great, and then we had 3,200 responses to our parent survey that went out. And then the other key piece that we're working on with Shannon Kelly Ray is a convening, and that's going to happen here, I believe, and we're kind of working through what room it's going to be in because we think it might be more than what room 201 can handle. So maybe 20-ish, 25 folks coming.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 30. Shannon has kind of put together what she thinks is a representative group, and just as a reminder, so the intent of this is to talk about whether there's community interest and momentum around an equity and diversity community-wide initiative that's larger than just the school district, but that might encompass the cities or the counties or the faith-based communities or the nonprofit communities. So that's really the purpose of the intent. It's part of our plan, but our plan is basically to see is there interest in going larger than just the school district.
And we've met twice with a smaller group, and so Shannon Kelly Ray has taken the lead and gotten a bigger group.
I was going to say, were you going to
I'm pretty sure we're on the same page. Go ahead.
first?
Well, we can tell the date to this.
Well, this is March 31st.
And the date's right there in big black and white. Thank you very much.
But we can, we're still working on the timeline thing, so that's probably part of the time that we need to get that message to you.
And is it okay?
All right.
I need to look at the stakeholder list. I think the school district, I know the school district's on the stakeholder list. So.
Yeah, I just would like to listen.
And can I ask, what is Shannon's role in the district now? Is she paid by us now? Because originally she was just coming in as a consultant.
Right, she was just sort of helping us on loan from her day job at OFM in the governor's office, and we actually have entered into a short-term personal services contract with her for her to facilitate this work. It was just more than she could volunteer to do. And I don't want to speak for Shannon, but I think that in my conversations with her, if there was community interest and momentum in a larger community-wide diversity initiative, she would be very interested in playing a key role in that, and even to the point of perhaps considering whether or not she could continue sort of in both, with both positions that she has.
So what's the short term, what do you mean by short term?
To get through this convening process and then to see if there's interest in a community-wide diversity and equity initiative.
Bigger could be.
Would that be something voted on by the board, or is that?
It would be something that would be, well, yeah, something that would be ultimately voted on by the board, and all of the boards or the governing bodies of each organization that would choose to become a part of it. Right.
So that's our community engagement update right now. But let's take you through what's been happening on the professional development realm for all of us. So we've had a variety of professional development opportunities for our staff, starting with our school staffs and administrator training on getting a deeper understanding and maybe a little bit more facility of working on conducting manifest determinations and really looking at the nexus between student behaviors and underlying disabilities. And we started in August, and we ran a variety of trainings through December. We've also contracted with Caprice Hollins, and we are in the midst of our series of hour-and-a-half cultural competency workshops with our administrators. And we started in August with a kickoff with our advance, and we will move through May 2016, and it's been highly well received by our administrators. We've done all our administrative teams, and then we've also done a focus on our school-based administrators and instructional directors.
And I know we talked about one time that, because the old board was here before Ken and David got on when we had our training. And I think we talked about having another training at some point. Is that?
Well, we were looking at places, and that's why all those seminars that come up from NSD and all those things, that 2 days in the end of May that we're going to is a training.
I didn't know if we were going to do one like as a retreat.
Well, with Caprice, I think Caprice, in terms of doing all 5 board members, do I remember this correctly, that wasn't necessarily a format she was going to go forward with.
I think she'd be comfortable doing whatever you'd like to do. Her training doesn't lend itself well to a 5-person training. It's more large group-based types of training.
She was talking about,
Which training was that?
That was
Caprice.
Oh,
That was Caprice.
That was
So she was talking about combining with another
Yeah.
school district or something.
Yeah, she was trying to, so she's forwarded some different opportunities that I put in the briefing, and then some other things have come up, like the ESD. And I think all 6 of us are scheduled to attend the 2-day WASA-WASDA Equity Summit in the end of May. And we are actually presenting, I'm actually presenting with Ed Northwest on, just kind of a case study of what we've been doing as a district and our work with them.
Can I ask this question? This link between student behavior and underlying disabilities, is that physical disabilities or is disabilities? Behavior disabilities. So anybody that's having behavior problems,
Really need to
word
make
is
that.
disability?
The manifest determination is really specific to special needs students, identified special needs students. What we find is that oftentimes our students who have significant behavioral issues that play themselves out in the school in unhealthy ways are also students with identified special needs. And so there's a very formal process that has to occur, particularly around disciplining or how you would respond to that student's behavior, where you have to go through a process of determining, is the behavior that's causing the discipline a manifestation of the underlying disability? And if it is or isn't, determines how you might be able to proceed.
Do you see that with ICAP students also?
If they are special needs.
Because there are students that do qualify for special.
Double,
right.
Double exception, absolutely.
And then, so, just because we're on that bullet, so December 2015, so that work's pretty wrapped up. I remember that was a question that came up about it.
Well, I think we can I think it's refresher course, and every time
At
we
this
get new
point, okay.
administrators, and sometimes it's even with different challenges that we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and have the same understanding, that we'll always come back and do a little bit more training or an update with our staffs. It's really critical. It's something that our special ed folks do every August with special education teachers. It's just a nice review. Also, we just finished a 2-day, pretty intensive threat assessment workshop last week, Thursday and Friday, with our school teams and district administrators, and we actually had our Bothell SRO, Louise was there, and First Sergeant, and some mental health specialists from Sound Mental Health and the Center for Human Services, and Diana Browning-Wright is a nationally renowned expert in threat assessment training, and so that was a pretty intense workshop for all of us, so that we just finished. And we are in our second year with cohort 1 of our PBIS MPS training, and we're working with Dr. Clayton Cook, and he's also helping us, he's back in for cohort 2, and we are moving forward on looking at cohort 3 for next school year. So we'll finish up all our elementaries and add our last 2 junior highs.
What, you had mentioned that the threat assessment was, yeah, what particularly about it was?
There was a lot of legal ramifications, and we are looking at to make sure our new policy and our procedure and our threat assessment decision tree are matching, and so it's really going through all those pieces that we have, that we've implemented to see how we align. And it's, you ask these 7 questions as when you're first starting, and then if you need to do a more extensive, and we need to change our language to threat inquiry, then we have 11 other questions to ask, and always documenting, doing data, and making sure that we are in alignment. And if it's a transient threat, then these are the things that you look at. If it moves to the substantive side, then these are the 11 questions. So
Some get in that matrix or decision-making tree.
It's a document about 3/4 of an inch thick.
Oh, it is, okay.
well,
The training
I didn't,
the training
I didn't know
document,
if there was just like that.
but the decision-making tree and the overview of what are the different, what's a transient to a substantive, what's a serious versus a very serious threat, those are in the board policy and the procedure and online in the forms. And we're going to be updating the forms because what we're realizing is we really do need to change from assessment to inquiry because it has a whole different legalese. So they're online right now, but we can get you the new updated ones.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a gander at our data analysis that we've done so far. So as you recall, we, in our first update in December, to let you know that we, thanks to our technology team, Alan and Julie and Michelle, got all our student information data needed by Ed Northwest to them in a timely fashion so that they could start doing the work that we utilize for their data briefs. We've also you approved the policy, and that was our change and revision to 4314, October 15th. So that was a red letter day for us. And we have implemented, we put in our procedures, we approved at the cabinet level based on that policy. And we've got the decision-making tree, the response report, and like I said, we just finished our 2-day training with all our administrators. And we have contracted with and we've implemented our services, the Center for Human Services, for that external mental health assessment, which is part of what we wanted to be reviewed after last year's occurrence. We have revised and approved Administrative Procedure 4411P, working with our law enforcement agencies, made that tighter and a little bit more explicit. We've trained our staff on Safe Schools Alert, and we are in the process, and for your viewing pleasure, in the next month or two, we'll be getting a new revised version of the R&R handbook, which is really much more user-friendly and accessible to students and parents.
So on the Safe Schools Alert, that's our anonymous hotline, right?
Yes.
Have we been getting a lot, I mean, how has that been working? Have there been calls?
We've got some.
We've got some, not a ton. We haven't and aren't experiencing a lot of, like shenanigans going on it, which was sort of one of the fears that people had, is that they would be getting all kinds of things that they would have to investigate that would turn out to be false. And the districts that we talked to who had gone before, some implemented safe schools, they didn't find that to be their experience, and we're not finding it either. We're getting some. There was kind of a little, little bubble when it first came out and was sort of publicized highly. But I think, I don't know the exact number, but in talking with Robert, I don't think we've had anything come through like in the last week or 10 days. So it kind of pops up and down a little bit.
Can we keep reminding the community about that, like if we did it every 6 months or something? Because until people get used to that that's available.
Yeah, there's also, we've embedded the Safe Schools Alert link and icon is now a standard item on every district web page. So every school web page, the district web page. So it's something that, reminders are probably still really important.
So if I go to like Kokanee,
you should see it you should see the same icon in the same place as what you would see. Right.
I'm gonna look at it.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I was curious too, you mentioned the law enforcement agencies. Are we still dealing with multiple city agencies?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So it's nice
They
to have
haven't
a.
consolidated.
Yeah, they have not, but
Curious
it's
if our
nice.
policy addressed that in any way differently.
Only that, I think it helps administrators in knowing the protocol and when we call the law enforcement, and that it's their responsibility then to make a decision, and that, then what are our next steps to put it in, get them in writing and proceed from there.
So one of the things we did prior to the start of school last year is actually had a meeting with all of the jurisdictions. And part of it is they sometimes have a little bit of a varying standard about when they want to be involved and when they don't, just kind of based on whatever jurisdiction it may be. So the conversation we had sort of had with them is we want to have a consistent standard at the district level as far as when we feel we need to involve law enforcement. We know we can't control or direct how they may choose to respond to that, but rather than us trying to customize across 5 jurisdictions, we need to be standardized across the districts, and if there needs to be customization, have it be on law enforcement and not on our.
Yeah, so I think this, I just pulled it up on the computer.
Yeah.
And then I saw where it goes, so that's a great webpage that it goes to. So maybe, I don't know, like if I'm looking for that would stand out to me, or I would know. So I don't know if there's a way to like,
Reminder?
an update, or maybe there's some way that we can highlight it on that. Because it's just in the middle of all the different icons, which is awesome it's on that. I think that's a great step. But, it says safe school alert right there, it's in the middle of. But I like it when you click on it, it goes directly, and then it says text message or, yeah.
And then the R&R, is that by school or is that?
This is the district R&R.
Okay.
Rights and responsibility handbook that every student signs off on,
So
that you'll approve.
Dr. Bigelow has been working on that with a team of people this year and an attorney. He thought initially it would take a couple of years because our book had gotten very large and cumbersome. And actually, I think we looked at a first draft of it yesterday in cabinet, and I think they're going to get it done this year. It still has some different hoops, different eyes that need to be on it, but it is a significantly pared down, reformatted document that I think feels less
That's awesome.
punitive,
It's more in line with CIS.
less confusing, less verbiage, easier to navigate, so I'm thinking it would be a vast. Great.
So kids can actually.
So, now let's jump into our Education Northwest, our equity data project. So that's kind of the overall project name. And we're going to look at part 1, which is, like Larry said, the 2 data briefs, diversity and welcoming environment and discipline. Okay. So some information from it. So when Education Northwest started the project, they had 2 questions in mind. So basically, what are the social and academic experiences of various communities and families in North Shore School District, and then how well is North Shore serving the academic needs for all students. And what was interesting, we met with them in January and realized that when they first started thinking about how the format data briefs could be, we realized that we didn't have enough information like we thought we could do it school by school by school, because some communities, when we reached out, and sometimes only 3 parents came and were part of the focus groups, or a fewer number from a certain school might have done the parent survey. So we determined that it would be better to look at it in pathways, so that like the Inglemoor pathway, the Ball pathway, and so the elementary, the junior high, the high school that would all fit into those pathways. And so what, we don't have the executive summary yet, so I'm feeling that's going to come at the end. But the series of data briefs, these are the topics that they're going to cover. Reflections on diversity, student discipline, the perception of belonging and feeling of inclusion, bullying, college and high school readiness, and the support and expectation across programs. And where they got these themes was based on how the community was responding to the survey and the focus group. And they had a set of questions that all focus groups had. And then when the survey went out, there was a broad range of questions that community parents answered, and also then the feedback that they were able to provide in the survey. They were able to get just input.
So just quickly, you mentioning that the executive summary isn't ready, so.
It'll come at the end.
Okay,
Kind
no. Oh, okay, no, I'm just wondering about timeline.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get there. Yeah. What we realized, it's taken longer, just saying all great plans, thought that we'd be done by now, but it was a lot of data, and with very huge amount of qualitative data with 54 focus groups in the survey. So it took, I think it became more of a daunting task than what we first realized back in August.
I guess so, what if there's like one standout school where there's more issues or concerns? Because you're saying we're gonna go through pathways, because some schools didn't have as many people, that's what I heard you say. So let's say, I don't wanna like highlight a school, but let's say I'm in X school, where maybe my population of students has higher free reduced lunch. Would we pull out and go, this particular school has some individual challenge, yeah, I'm trying to use the right English, individual challenges or challenges that maybe some of our other schools don't face? So I hear what you're saying about the pathway, but what if in the pathway, let's say of Woodinville,
I think we'd have to ask that question of Ed Northwest as to whether in their analysis they found, even given perhaps the low numbers that you don't want to generalize too significantly, did they see any hot spots or any patterns or any outliers that warrant some further investigation? We could
I think
certainly
that
ask
would be a really good question.
Absolutely. Okay. So just as a reminder, the data briefs draw on 3 data sources. So the focus groups, so the 54 focus groups. And as a reminder, we had 32 parent focus groups, so 1 per school. 9 student focus groups, so we did 1 for junior high, 1 for high school per pathway, right? So you have, and then we had 1 for junior high, 1 for high school, sorry about that. And then 6 teacher focus groups, so that's the 2 per pathway, elementary, secondary. And then 1 administrator focus group. And then we had 8 culturally specific focus groups that we talked about in July, I think, when we first set this up, to really focus on some of our increased demographics that we're seeing. Parent surveys. And then the district administrative trends, data, that's our student information system. So we were looking at 5-year trends, so from the 2011-12 school district through the 2014-15. And they really looked at participation in advanced courses, participation in SAT, grades from selected courses, attendance, suspension,
percentages of the different parent surveys, do they reflect, sorry,
Ta-da.
percentages?
So the answer is no.
No.
So we have, so these are the folks who did the voluntary online service. So we have, I think the biggest takeaway is we have an oversampling of white families, and we have a significant undersampling of our Latino families.
And Leanna and I learned a lot, as did Education Northwest, on reaching out to our Latino families. But we had a Spanish-speaking focus group, and we had an English-speaking focus group for the Latino parents, so they could choose which language and which group they wanted to be a part of. And it took, I'll just say, Herculean efforts to try to make sure that we reached out to folks and that it would be safe and okay to come to the district office to be a part of the focus group. And then with the parent surveys, we had translated the survey in Spanish. We sent out the letters in Spanish. We sent emails in Spanish. We found all our Spanish Latino families who did not have email and had cell phones, and then text them a message in Spanish. But all of that, and we had, remember being here with Karen Orsinger and our natural leaders, and we worked really hard to try to determine how would we still reach out. So they made phone calls, they talked to their parents at schools, and still we're not reaching them in the way that we need to reach them. And what we realized, to really reach out to our parents, we think it means going to every school. And for this one, opening the computer lab so much in the morning, so much after hours, so that if you wanted to go before you went to work or after, and having our natural leaders available. So we really realized that we got more than we got than for the start time first survey, but we're still not reaching all percentage wise.
Ed Northwest had seen some good results with the text messaging in particular, the use of the cell phones, and we really bent over backwards to try and make that work. But, it's hard to know what the percentage would have been had we not done those efforts. It's sort of a case of omission. But we still haven't found the right formula.
We think they're most comfortable at their schools and receiving an email from their principal or a natural leader who's from their schools. Or this is from the school versus,
Someone's trying to find something.
well, just,
Can't
from a
trust the
district.
person.
Well, or who are they, right? They're very connected to their school community. Yeah.
And maybe this too gives us an insight potentially into, the achievement gap where we might be struggling reaching Latino families. Potentially, it might illuminate a larger.
From an academic involvement standpoint,
Yeah.
and not just community outreach.
Right, like if we're having trouble reaching Latino families, I realize we're doing it from a district level, but are we having trouble reaching them at a local
I think
school level?
I take a page out of May Pelto's playbook, which is you reach out to the community by going into the community and finding that, like, is there, if you're at an apartment complex, is there, a great room where you can go and have, a training. I've seen it happen at some of our other schools where they reach out to a community center that parents are going to us. Okay, so moving forward, so here's what we know so far with Data Brief 1, which is on diversity and welcoming environment. But I would say that 92% of our parents feel that they strongly agree that their child's culture and language feel valued and respected. Most parents feel that their family's welcome. And most start seeing some differences, and we start getting into parents with children of color, more likely than white parents to report that more could be done, to make the families feel welcome. African American and Latino parents are more likely than others to indicate that not feeling welcome is an obstacle for participating in school activities. 91% of staff and parents together are, but 91% felt that staff and parents were able to overcome cultural barriers. However, many stated that North Shore's ethnic diversity is not explicitly acknowledged and valued in schools or reflected in school curriculum. So I think that's a big learning piece for us, and I think it goes to what Reese has been talking to us about and our trainings as administrators is it's that colorblind sort of mentality that doesn't work.
Yeah, that was one of the very early training points of Greece, is that oftentimes sort of the sense is, oh, well, we're a colorblind organization. We don't see color. We don't see those kinds of differences. And she would debunk that and say, well, of course you do. Everybody does. And so that's actually not a helpful stance to take. The helpful stance to take is to actually acknowledge that you do, and the differences are apparent, they do exist, they are real, and figure out how you embrace and work within them. So I think we have, I think the research results would indicate that we do have some of that colorblindism to overcome.
Okay. So continuing on with the diversity and welcoming environment data group. So we have, so that when folks filled out the survey or were part of the focus groups, parents, students, teachers, and administrators really believe that diversity training would be useful for district staff. And it's about, communication and training, as well as having tools and strategies that we can utilize and to address diversity in really culturally sensitive ways. So to get beyond any kind of awkwardness or the colorblind, oh, it's not really there mentality. Their parents recommended specifically embedding diversity in everyday teaching, so not make it a special occasion, or really look at it and see it in everything that teachers are teaching, kids are learning. They are very positive about the multicultural events that are held at school, and we thought this was interesting, and so I pulled it out, and that is some parents and staff believe that too many accommodations have been made to make holiday celebrations inclusive. So we had and this is straight from the report, a small but vocal group at Northwest, small but vocal group of white parents and staff felt disrespected because students are prohibited from celebrating traditional American holidays such as Halloween, Christmas, and Valentine's Day. And however, parents from other cultures did not feel disrespected that their holidays weren't celebrated. What they want is that the holidays are acknowledged and publicized so teachers would know why their students are missing school. And even though you think about it, we put them in our district communication and our calendar, it's not publicized enough so that it's more apparent. So I think that's pretty telling statements. And
I know at our school, and I haven't really related to it, there's even this year again, there is such a big upheaval over not celebrating Halloween and Valentine's, like an upheaval, right? 2 years now. So I'm glad that came out because it shows it's probably not just at, we have a high Hindu population in our school, so that's interesting, but it becomes very tense. It's
very
like,
tense.
yeah.
So it goes back to, the first bullet, right? Having some training and strategies and tools to be able to address diversity in culturally sensitive ways.
And I I guess the question on that, but also all the things is when, it sounds like it's definitely in process and it's on a trajectory of learning and then considering what are the adjustments that you make. When do things come to, and what's the process, and it's maybe just an interjected question, and come to the board as the board policy questions, and when are they kind of, these are the normal learnings and adjustments, and they're happening at the building level, they're happening at the classroom level, they're happening in these hallway conversations that as we become aware of things. And so, for example, that one, you know, it might be something that we hear enough about that is, you know, but generally I would think we would try to keep these in the normal trajectory of organizational learning.
So I think the advice we got early on is that you really need to go through this process of kind of researching and understanding sort of the sentiment of your community, getting into training and learning what you don't know and learning what you don't know, and that the last stop should be policy. Because last spring, into the summer, sort of the first stop people wanted, we're pushing on the board, is to come out with a policy decision or policy pronouncements. And we were really advised by very smart people who know much more about this than we do, that really policy ought to be the end point of sort of where you get along that trajectory, along that journey. And so it could be that at some point in time, it may make sense for the board to consider some kind of policy or policy statement or philosophical statement around celebration of holidays and inclusiveness of the celebration of holidays. I wouldn't rush to get there.
Right, and I wouldn't either, and that's kind of the question of when is there this sense of being the point where we could have any kind of this, and we're updated, we're in favor of the work going forward, and you know, see it's making progress, and then if and when there's something that's bubbling up, you know, you kind of have to generally address that, and so how, and I don't know when, you know, more of a protocol, I guess, than a policy, and I completely appreciate the path that's.
And these things get very complex. I mean, you just look at Halloween, Christmas, and Valentine, aside from just the cultural tradition of those, there are also significant economic ramifications around those. If you're a family of limited means, what does it mean to have to feel pressured to provide a costume for your child, or to have Valentine's Day cards, or a little piece of candy for 25 students in class, or all the things we do around, you know, the Christmas holiday for giving, and you know, so it's more than just the sort of holiday tradition around those. There's other considerations.
Okay, so data brief 2 is on student discipline. Forward. So the first bullet I think is significant in that our suspensions are generally low in North Shore School District. So
Compared to the state, or compared to, because I know they're based in Oregon, like what kind
I think compared to, I would say the state, when they're looking at their national, right? And so they're looked at, you know, that our out of school suspension remained relatively flat at the junior high, and it dropped in the high school between the 2011-12 and the 2014-15 school year. So that was great. Interesting that instead of doing more out of school suspensions, we've got an uptick in doing in-school suspensions. So we had 1.9% of our junior highs and 1.3% of our high school students who received in-school suspension during the 14-15 school year.
that's relatively new for,
Yes,
right, relative
realizing
practice.
it's much better to.
It's certainly grown in the last couple of years.
I think the next bullet is rather interesting, which is that suspension rates differ across the three school feeder patterns, and we're noting that there's a higher percentage of students suspended in the Inglemore pathway schools, not at Inglemore, but in the Inglemore pathway schools, and especially in the Inglemore high school pathway junior highs, compared to the other two pathways. And that is something
That's
that
North Shore, Kenmore.
So that is something that Dr. Bigelow has been aware of and been working with the more pathway administrators.
And actually with all administrators this year, Chris has been pulling discipline data. You've seen some of it in your briefings. And so he's pulling with at regular intervals and regularly reviewing those with administrators in, as much real time as possible to kind of get a handle on what's happening at various schools, at least surfaces, so it can be talked about. And then, of course, we've seen the market difference in discipline occurrences between our PBIS and our non-PBIS junior highs. So, yeah.
And then the last two bullets on this page of what this is where we're really looking at the disproportionality, right? So that students with disabilities, economic disadvantage, and those who are learning English are suspended at a higher rate than other students. And so this is going to be an area to really unpack and try to figure out why that is occurring. And that if we look at the African American students, they are increasingly suspended at higher rates than other students. So that's a key point to really
So what are the
review and
goals?
analyze.
How will it be reviewed and analyzed?
Well, first, you're seeing it for the very first
Yeah.
time. So
Then you'll go think.
then we're going to, our next steps are working with the administrators, and Chris is already, as learning the same, talking to the administrators for Pathway on the types of suspensions and what they're seeing already.
So one of the things we tend to see in the data is that sometimes the economically disadvantaged students, African American students, English language learning students, have a higher rate of suspension in kind of this other category. And other tends to be a catch-all for things like defiance or disobedience or failure to follow reasonable directives, things that arguably can be perhaps more subjective in nature than I stole something or I was using drugs or I was cheating,
We're at a little fight.
Yeah, and I think that's where that's the entry point in my mind to the conversation, because I think that goes to the issue of are we culturally competent, or are we being culturally responsive in how we're interpreting and interacting with students of color, or students who don't speak English as a native language, or students who are perhaps economically disadvantaged. And I think that's really where the entry point into that conversation is, what's that defiance look like? What's that disobedience look like? And how does that look different from, are we interpreting it differently from an African American student than we're interpreting from a white student? And how does that reflect on ourselves? And that's, a lot of the, where do we come from? What are we bringing to the table as individuals with, recognizing that most of our administrators and our teachers are white. And that's sort of the growth area that certainly around the cultural competency training we're doing with Priest is really valuable.
Very valuable. And, an unpacking of discipline issues. So, really trying to come to the roots of what caused this, whatever this is. And so that you can see kind of what brought it to discipline issues. So that might be different from students of color.
Like the students late all the time because they don't have them. They're taking care of the sibling at home, and then that's, the teacher isn't aware of that, and they're like, you need to be on time anyway, and
Right.
Yes.
they're not.
You might change the class to second period, or there's a variety of ways to do it.
So that's the way to do it.
In Highline, I think when we were at the conference, they really, had tried to go to some no suspension policy, which is just not possible with the number of humans that you have, because true violations, safety violations happen. And so, but this is that category that they were really spending a lot of time trying to dig into, and it's where, especially a lot of this disadvantage-based type suspensions actually seem to be.
And it ties
Seems to be the source of it.
Yeah, and it ties directly into our PBIS work
Yes.
too, because that's how you create a culture, an environment at your school where all kids feel safe and welcome, and then how also do you develop a language and a way of interacting with kids that you don't escalate them, or you don't exacerbate the situation, and all of a sudden, a student is facing a disciplinary situation because Perhaps they've been goaded into that, I mean, that's probably too strong of a word, but
I think moms all get that.
you know, but what can we as the adults in the school do to minimize the opportunities for those kinds of behaviors to come about?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're moving away from being very strict and stern. This gets you, this happening gets you, lunchtime detention, and it moves to the, we're trying to move away from being so
Prescriptive.
punitive, I'd say, yes.
And is this, this intervention is kind of the first time that this district has really engaged in that kind of,
PBIS?
or just the notion of, is this the first time we've done a data dive on the discipline with this kind of the paradigm of?
Not the first time. The state, out of their civil rights office, has started churning some data in recent years. So I wasn't, for example, looking at the higher rates of suspension in the Eagle-Born pathway. I could have predicted that from previous looks of discipline data that we've seen. I think the step of kind of unpacking further into that sort of that amorphous other category, this is probably one of the first times we're really going to that level of conversation.
Right. And that's, I mean, other people have been uncovering that and working on it, so, okay, but it's just that point, we're very early in our trajectory in that kind of path.
And I think what's helping us, I would say, is this next slide, which is that I think because we did survey and parent focus groups, that really, I mean, besides looking at the data of this many suspensions of this type, we're actually, we dove down into seeing what parents are thinking, so that they're expressing concern that, the school discipline practices aren't consistent across groups. And when we looked at, Education Northwest kind of looked at the 34 parents who responded of African American students and completed the survey, 65 strongly agreed that we were fair, but there's 35% who weren't feeling that we're fair in how we assigned this, versus 82% of the district had agreed that saying that we have this fair. That's something to unpack and look at, and then our parents of African American students and students with disabilities, especially, are more likely to feel that their kids are being singled out.
That's something I hear a lot too, just anecdotally.
Right, so it's nice to see it in qualitative stuff.
Yeah.
It's more than just anecdotal. So, that's basically what I've taken from the two reports. Here's our timeline. We're talking about a bit of a timeline.
Yeah.
So, today, on the 22nd, so your first kind of take on being able to see what's coming out. We're going to have a PLC, a professional learning community meeting with our principals, assistant principals, and instructional directors, administrators on April 7th, when we plan to share the same information with them. I've talked to Leanna about doing a script and a voice over for this presentation. Don't hold it on the mic because it's a public presentation. We're going, and look, and I call it PowerPoint. Anyway, we're going to do a voice with it, so voiceover, so that when it's online and available for our community, they have some of the background of why we're doing what we're doing and where we are in our steps. And then, so, in speaking with, the last piece is speaking with Education Northwest, we will get our, as of today, our final executive summary and our final data briefs by May 5th. And it takes a lot of review of them because we're noticing, as much as they look at it, there are things that are missed. Like ELL came out as EL. There was a graph that didn't have a title to it, so we're really kind of trying to hone in and look for everything because we want to have a really accurate, great data briefs that we can share. And they are currently they feel very user-friendly. I mean, they're going to be easy to read and very accessible to parents and community and reading them and trying to understand the story. And our next steps will be communication and dissemination of the final reports.
So we're gonna get the actual executive summary.
Yes. So, professional development and training, so what's our next steps? When we look at these, all in totality, what does it mean for us? And how should we move forward with professional development and training? What would it mean about curriculum and strategies and tools for teachers? And what other strategies, which will be dependent on what the bigger groups tell us.
So my question, to go back, kind of towards the beginning, just the overview of the project, the two key questions about social and academic experiences. I mean, some of the social was touched on, but I'm wondering, how well is NSD serving academic needs? And
You'll get
how
that.
Some of
so
those
is
may-
that more of the April?
That'll be in your May, because if you look at the,
Okay, cool.
if I go back.
So now I'm very curious about it.
So if you look at, it would be the third page in.
So right there. So college,
So
high school
Yeah, that's
There-
exactly what
there-
I'm talking about.
Yeah,
We will eventually get data briefs in all 6 of those
Right.
thematic
those are
areas.
coming.
Awesome.
You saw the first two. Now
Awesome.
that, I'll go back to here. So you're like, what? Yeah, so you've got the first, this was the information from the first two.
Right.
And I hope to have them ready for the board briefing, that we look at them and finalize them with Ed Northwest, these two, and this Google presentation with the voiceover by your board briefing on Google 8.
Or is there anything that stood out to you in those four, or have you not actually seen?
I haven't seen these four.
Oh, okay.
These are, they were able to provide the two where the information kind of really bubbled up to the surface and they could put it together with, see the flow. And I think there's so much when you look at college and high school readiness with all the SAT scores, the tests, the classes, and figuring out our course codes, that this means college and high school, this is AP, this is IB. That's
It's hard to choke through on the
It is.
side.
a monster test.
Okay.
So So I guess I have a kind of the policy question, and it relates to our goal as a board, is the mission and vision, and that's one of the things on the agenda that's not at the top of the agenda right now, but this would seem to me to be very informative to the kinds of initiatives and or clarifications we might have, as well as budget and or programmatic adjustments or changes, because you get this information and then how do we then next act? So we get that information, and so, yeah, exactly. And so getting that in May, the ability for that to inform our decisions or administrative decisions is question mark. What is that ability of this to inform what we do next? Is it incrementalism, which is, there's, we saw Rob Cohen's, he talked about, Ken, we're doing this, intensive incrementalism, and you're just always tweaking at it, or is it something that there'd be something big, and do we expect there to be like an initiative, or would we expect there to be additional work with Ed Northwest, or do we not yet know because we don't have the data? What's the next step?
Well, I would say we already have, a number of initiatives around this go. You can go back to the initial slides around the community engagement, professional development. So, I would say probably going to be more incrementalism.
Okay.
Sort of what does the data suggest, and what refinements do we need to make to the things we're already doing? I mean, I would say as a long-term strategy, our PBIS and TSS work, I think, is going to be very central to all issues of disproportionality, all issues of, communities, all reducing suspensions, keeping kids in school, making connections. That's going to be really important. So, and that's work we're already engaging in. So, what might we need to do in addition to that? Are
Right.
the kinds of questions.
Right, and it's, so having just gone through accreditation, the plan, do, check, act, that feedback of, okay, so you have this episode, then you learn, and then you start to say, okay, so then what do we do next? And so to the extent that even it's preliminary, because this is their report to us, then the next question is what do us do about it, and kind of thinking about what might be some of those things. And to the extent that it's already done, so we did this kind of an intense training, we're gonna repeat that training. Okay, so it's just even reflecting almost like an evaluation of, we're in midstream of a trajectory of trying to learn and adapt these things. So just trying to get the handle around it.
I think when we meet with the principals and assistant principals and the structural administrators, when they start looking at these, these PowerPoints, unpacking these two data briefs and what we're learning, I think that's a great step for thinking about for them for next year of what's next and how might we move forward to create a more welcoming environment for our families. And it's a great step, and launch for Chris and teams are looking at student discipline and, our work with Dr. Clayton Cook with the PBIS. So just constantly reaffirms.
And I think once we get all the data briefs, we might maybe be able to call out, what's appropriate at the building level, like helping families feel comfortable versus curriculum questions, which, will more naturally reside up.
I know that at the high school level, with the 9th grade, there's consideration of a different social studies, which is AP Human Geography, which really touches on this, the diversity and because it's a world human geography, and it takes everything into consideration as we move world history requirement to 10th grade. That's they're considering that. Then what's the launch in for 9th grade for social studies? So we're really thinking ahead of what could be some of our courses that are actually going on in our courses.
So I know a year ago or a year and a half ago, I think the board was making goals and we changed our language related to the achievement gap to all struggling learners, which obviously every student that's struggling is important, but we still have this wide achievement gap. With this information, might there be the possibility to see that, yes, there's all struggling learners, but there's pockets that are, we do see that our Latino kids have a wider achievement gap, a free reduced lunch. So while we don't want to miss any kid, will this maybe garner data where we can, and I know we are doing some things that are focused, like the ELL, but I want to see that go down, and it just is something that, it's not just us, but there's many districts that aren't able to impact this. Will this help us?
I think if we looked at, perhaps when we looked at the other reports, spinning, that keeps switching. But when we get to, I think, college and high school readiness, I think that's going to be critical to review, because I think we'll potentially will see some areas or some courses or we're going to see a disparity of who's in them, who's not, and probably this one, support and expectation across active programs. I will be very interested to see what information comes from the data that comes from those two reports.
And belonging and inclusion.
Belonging
if you
and
don't feel you
inclusion,
belong,
exactly.
you might not perform as well, right?
That's
And
exactly
my
So you're looking at, activities,
social
sports,
support
Right.
is critical.
right?
And I guess I would build on what you're saying to that notion of the board almost even maybe prioritizing, because there's the implicit statement that we haven't said, we really care about this, okay? And then, well, do we really care about it? Do we really care about it? Do we really